Have you ever heard of the name Moloch? It whispers through the darkest corners of history, a name synonymous with unimaginable horror. But what if I told you the truth is far more complex and far more terrifying than you've ever imagined? For centuries, scholars, theologians, and occultists have debated its true nature. Was Moloch a god, a king, or something else entirely? We are about to embark on a journey into the abyss, guided by the most ancient and forbidden texts, to uncover the face of the entity they called Moloch. Forget what you think you know. The reality is a tapestry woven from linguistics, ancient rivalries, and rituals so chilling they've been deliberately obscured for millennia. Let's begin with the name itself, the letters MLK. This Semitic root echoes across the ancient Near East in languages like Hebrew, Phoenician, and Akkadian. It simply means king or to rule. This fundamental meaning is the first key to unlocking the puzzle. Was Moloch the proper name of a deity, or was it a title like Ba, which means Lord, and could be applied to many different gods or even human rulers? Imagine an ancient inscription to MLK. Is it addressing a god named Moloch, or is it a dedication to the king? This ambiguity is where the mystery deepens. Some theories suggest that the term Molk was not a god at all, but the name of a specific, dreadful type of ritual sacrifice. So when the texts condemn offerings to Moloch, they might have meant offerings made as part of a Molk ritual, a kingly sacrifice offered to any number of deities, including Yahweh himself in some interpretations. The line between a god and the act of worship performed for him begins to blur, creating a shadow that is stretched for 3,000 years. As we dig deeper into the sacred and apocryphal texts, other names surface: Molech and Milcom. Are these simply variations, misspellings over time, or are they distinct entities that later became confused? In the Hebrew Bible, Molech is the abomination worshipped in the Valley of Hinnom, the fiery Gehenna just outside Jerusalem's walls. It is here that the most infamous rites are said to have taken place. But then there's Milcom, the national god of the Ammonites, a neighboring kingdom and frequent rival of the ancient Israelites. The scriptures often seem to use Molech and Milcom interchangeably, condemning the Israelites for turning to the god of their enemies. Were they truly the same god seen through the hostile lens of a rival culture? Or was Milcom a distinct deity, perhaps a powerful storm or warrior god, whose identity was later merged and syncretized with the more generically terrifying figure of Molech? Imagine a divine doppelganger, two beings slowly fusing into one in the collective nightmare of humanity. This confusion isn't just an academic debate. It's a battle of cultures, where demonizing the god of your enemy was a powerful act of spiritual warfare, creating a composite monster from the fragments of conquered faiths. And this brings us to the heart of the darkness, the rituals. The phrase that echoes through the scriptures is, passing a child through the fire. For centuries, many interpreted this symbolically as a purification rite, but a darker, more literal interpretation is supported by Greek and Roman historians, and by the chilling descriptions found in medieval grimoires. They paint a picture of an idol almost too terrible to conceive, a colossal hollow statue of bronze, with the body of a man and the head of a bull. Its arms are outstretched, palms upward, sloping down towards its gaping mouth. A fire would be kindled within the statue's belly, heating the metal until it glowed a terrifying, malevolent red. Accounts describe a deafening cacophony of drums, flutes, and cymbals, played loud enough to drown out the sounds of the ceremony from those placing infants onto the searing hot hands of the idol, from which they would roll into the fire below. This image of the great brazen bull god became the definitive depiction of Moloch in the Western imagination. It is the ultimate symbol of a society sacrificing its own future, its own children, to a merciless, insatiable system. It's a vision of horror that has been seared into our cultural consciousness, a warning against the ultimate price of blind devotion. Whether this brazen idol ever truly existed as described or if it was an amalgamation of different practices and feverish nightmares, its power as a symbol is undeniable. So who or what is Moloch? After sifting through the layers of linguistics, theology, and ritual, the answer remains terrifyingly elusive. Moloch is not just one thing, he is a title for a king. He is the name of a foreign god demonized by his rivals. He is the term for a horrifying ritual of sacrifice. He is a composite nightmare, a symbol constructed over millennia to represent the ultimate evil, the consumption of the innocent for the sake of power. In the 20th century, the name found new life. Thinkers and poets began to use Moloch as a metaphor for the dehumanizing systems of modern life, including unchecked industrialism, soulless capitalism, the machinery of war, and any vast impersonal system that demands human sacrifice for its continued existence. The great brazen idol is no longer in a valley outside Jerusalem. It is the factory, the military-industrial complex, the algorithm that demands our attention, our happiness, our very souls. The fire is no longer literal, but it burns all the same. The ancient horror of Moloch, it seems, never left us. It just changed its form. It reminds us that the greatest monsters are not always supernatural beings from a bygone age. Sometimes they are the very systems we ourselves create, feed, and obey. The question then is not what Moloch was, but what Moloch is right now, and what sacrifices are we being asked to make in its name. Moloch wasn't just outlawed. His worship was considered a contamination, a spiritual plague that threatened to unravel the very fabric of a nation. This isn't just a story about a forgotten idol. It's a tale of forbidden rituals, divine betrayal, and a battle for the soul of ancient Israel. Who was this terrifying deity, and why was his name met with such absolute horror? Let's uncover the dark history of Moloch. Our journey begins in the ancient texts of the Hebrew Bible, specifically in the book of Leviticus. Here, amidst laws governing daily life and worship, a stark warning is issued. The people of Israel are explicitly commanded not to give any of their children to be passed through the fire to Moloch. The penalty for this transgression was severe, death. This wasn't merely a suggestion. It was a divine line drawn in the sand. To worship Moloch was to defile the sanctuary of God and profane his holy name. The text presents this deity not as a minor false god, but as a profound and direct threat, a corrupting influence that had to be purged from the community at all costs. The very mention of his name is wrapped in prohibition, setting the stage for a conflict that would span centuries. But why was this particular deity considered so dangerous? To understand this, we need to look at the historical context laid out in the books of Kings and Jeremiah. The story here shifts from legal prohibition to a devastating reality. We learn that the worship of Moloch wasn't just practiced by a few fringe elements. It had infiltrated the highest levels of Israelite society, even reaching the royal court. Kings like Ahaz and Manasseh are recorded as having made their own sons pass through the fire, an act seen as the ultimate betrayal of their covenant with Yahweh, the God of Israel. This wasn't just a private spiritual matter. The prophets saw it as the root of societal and moral decay. In a valley just outside the holy city of Jerusalem, in the valley of Hinnom, also known as Tophet, these forbidden rites were taking place. This valley, later a symbol of damnation itself, became the stage for these horrific acts. Prophets like Jeremiah stood there, his voice crying out against the abomination. He condemned the people for building high places to sacrifice their sons and daughters in the fire, something he declared God had never commanded or even imagined. The worship of Moloch was a sign that the nation had lost its way, trading its divine protector for a monstrous idol, and inviting its own destruction. It was an existential threat, a spiritual cancer eating away at the heart of the kingdom. This brings us again to the most chilling aspect of Moloch's worship, the phrase passing through the fire. For centuries, this phrase has haunted scholars and theologians. The most direct and terrifying interpretation describes a literal, brutal sacrifice of children and infants. The air would be filled with the sound of drums and flutes, played loudly to drown out the cries of the victims and their parents. This act was seen as a desperate offering to appease the god, to secure fertility for the land or victory in war. However, some historians offer a different perspective. They suggest that passing through the fire might have been a symbolic purification ritual, where children were passed between two pillars of fire or quickly through the flames as a rite of passage or dedication to the deity. In this view, death wasn't the intention, but it was a frequent and horrifying outcome. A child could easily stumble, be overcome by the smoke, or receive fatal burns. Whether it was a direct, intentional sacrifice or a perilous rite gone wrong, the result was the same: the death of a child at the altar of a forbidden god. This ambiguity doesn't lessen the horror, it deepens it. It shows a culture so steeped in this worship that it was willing to risk its most vulnerable members in a terrifying spectacle of fire and faith. This ritual of child sacrifice wasn't unique to the worshippers of Moloch. Similar practices are found in various ancient cultures, particularly among the Phoenicians and their colony of Carthage. For them, it was a grim transaction with the divine, offering the most precious thing they had in exchange for favor. When the Israelites adopted this practice, it was seen as a complete rejection of their own unique identity. Their covenant with God was founded on principles of justice, mercy, and the sanctity of life. Child sacrifice was the antithesis of everything they were supposed to stand for. Therefore, Moloch became more than just a rival god. He became the symbol of everything they were not. He represented a worldview where life was cheap, where fear ruled over faith, and where parents could commit the ultimate act of betrayal against their own children. The fight against Moloch was a fight for the very soul of Israelite morality and identity. He was the shadow, the ultimate other, whose fiery embrace threatened to consume everything they held sacred. In the end, the story of Moloch serves as a powerful and disturbing reminder. It's a testament to how societies can be drawn to practices that defy their own core values. The condemnation of Moloch in the biblical texts is absolute, because he represented a fundamental corruption of the relationship between humanity and the divine, between parent and child, and between a nation and its moral compass. He wasn't just a demon made of bronze and fire. Moloch was the embodiment of a rival faith, a path of despair and destruction that threatened to extinguish the light of a fledgling civilization. The memory of his fires in the Valley of Hinnom serves as a timeless warning against the darkest impulses of the human heart. In the sun-scorched lands of ancient Canaan, a bitter rivalry festered, not just between kings and armies, but between gods. Two immense powers vied for the souls of humanity: Baal, the mighty storm god, and Moloch, the child devourer, the king of dreadful sacrifice. This was more than a theological dispute. It was a war for cosmic supremacy, fought in the temples and on the battlefields of warring city-states. The followers of Baal looked to the skies, praying for rain and fertility, seeing their god in the life-giving tempest. But the devotees of Moloch looked to the flames, believing that true power, purification, and divine favor could only be bought with the most terrible price. This conflict shaped the destiny of an entire civilization. So why are these two titanic figures, Baal and Moloch, so often mistaken for one another? The confusion is ancient, woven into the very fabric of sacred and apocryphal texts. Some scholars argue that Moloch was not a name, but a title derived from the Semitic root mlk, meaning king. It's possible that Moloch was a horrific descriptor for a type of ritual called a Molk sacrifice that could have been offered to various deities, including, in some twisted instances, a darker aspect of Baal himself. The biblical prophets, in their righteous fury, often condemned the Canaanite pantheon as a whole, blurring the lines between individual gods to emphasize their collective opposition to the Israelite God, Yahweh. The result is a historical puzzle where Baal the storm lord and Moloch the fiery king become entangled, their identities overlapping in a haze of ancient condemnation and scholarly debate. At the heart of their rivalry lies a stark contrast in symbolism, the storm versus the fire. Baal, the rider of the clouds, wielded thunder and lightning. His storms could be destructive, yet they were also the source of life-giving rain, promising harvests and prosperity. His worship was a celebration of nature's cycles, of life, death, and rebirth. Moloch, on the other hand, was pure consumption. His element was fire, not the gentle flame of the hearth, but a ravenous, all-devouring inferno. For his followers, fire was the ultimate agent of transformation and purification. It was a gateway to the divine, a trial by which the faithful worshippers demonstrated their ultimate devotion. Where Baal's storm promised renewal on earth, Moloch's fire promised a terrible transcendence, a passage through the flames into the presence of a terrifying absolute power. This divine struggle was mirrored on the ground as Canaanite city-states chose their celestial patrons. Coastal cities like Ugarit, heavily reliant on maritime trade and agriculture, predominantly revered Baal. His control over the rains and seas made him their natural protector and benefactor. Their politics and prosperity were intrinsically linked to his favor. But in other regions, particularly among the Ammonites in the inland kingdoms, Moloch held sway. Their capital, Rabbah, is cited in Scripture as a major center for his worship. The reasons were likely complex, a mix of cultural tradition, political identity, and perhaps a belief that in their harsh, arid environment, only the most extreme sacrifices could secure survival and victory against their enemies. Allegiance to Moloch was a declaration of strength, a willingness to embrace the harshest of paths to power, setting them apart from their Baal-worshipping neighbors in a constant, simmering conflict. As ages passed and empires fell, the old gods of Canaan did not simply vanish. They were transformed. In the crucible of medieval demonology, pagan deities were systematically rebranded as infernal creatures, and few were recast with such terrifying gravity as Moloch. Christian and Jewish scholars, looking back at the biblical condemnations, saw not a rival god, but a prince of hell. He was no longer just a foreign deity. He was a tempter, a corrupter, a high-ranking demon in the hierarchy of the abyss. This reinterpretation wasn't just a theological shift. It was a deliberate act of spiritual warfare, turning a symbol of a defeated religion into a universal icon of evil. A cautionary figure whose very name became a synonym for the ultimate corruption of faith. From the pages of Scripture, Moloch slithered into the darkest corners of occult literature, into the grimoires. In these abominable books of magic which claimed to hold the secrets to summoning and commanding spirits, Moloch appears as a formidable and dreadful power. Texts like the Dictionnaire Infernal depict him, sometimes conflated with other entities. He is depicted as a crowned bull, or a man with a bull's head, seated on a brazen throne wreathed in fire. These descriptions cemented his image as a being of immense authority and terrifying appearance. Sorcerers who dared to invoke his name sought not blessings but power over others, knowledge of hidden things, and the ability to command the destructive force of fire. He became a patron of dark ambition, a demonic king promising worldly power in exchange for one's soul. But why has Moloch, above so many other ancient figures, become so inextricably linked with judgment, fire, and sacrifice? It stems from the sheer horror of his biblical portrayal. The act of passing a child through the fire was seen as the most profound abomination, a complete inversion of the sacred bond between parent and child. This act made Moloch the ultimate symbol of corrupted authority and divine judgment. Fire, in this context, is not just an element. It is the wrath of God made manifest, a purifying yet annihilating force. And sacrifice to Moloch is not a gift, but a surrender to nihilism, the ultimate act of giving up the future, symbolized by the child, for a fleeting moment of perceived power or deliverance. He embodies the terrifying idea that judgment can be invoked not just by a righteous God, but by a demonic one, through acts of unspeakable cruelty. So once again, who is Moloch? He is a shadow with many faces. He was the rival god of Canaan, a king of fire who warred against the Lord of the storm. He is a demon of the grimoires, a fallen angel enthroned in hell, offering abominable power to those who dared to call his name. He is the embodiment of sacrifice at its most terrible, the symbol of authority corrupted into tyranny. Moloch is not just a figure from history. He is a timeless archetype of the darkness that lurks within the human heart, the temptation to sacrifice our most precious values on the altar of power. His story is a haunting echo through the centuries, a chilling reminder that the fires of Moloch, once lit, are never easily extinguished. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark. If you seek to understand the shadows, make sure to subscribe and follow our descent. What if this ancient deity called Moloch never really left? What if its shadow looms over us today, demanding tribute in ways we barely recognize? This is the story of the evolution of Moloch, the god of child sacrifice, and how its influence persists in the modern world. Our journey begins in the shadows, within the enigmatic world of occultism and secret societies. For centuries, Moloch has been a figure of fascination and fear. Legends speak of clandestine gatherings where powerful individuals invoke its name. One of the most notorious examples is the Bohemian Grove, a secluded retreat in California where influential men gather for an annual encampment. The centerpiece of this gathering is the cremation of care ceremony, where a large owl-like effigy is worshipped. While organizers claim it's harmless theatrics, critics and conspiracy theorists see a disturbing parallel to ancient Moloch worship. The owl, a symbol of wisdom but also a nocturnal predator, becomes a modern stand-in for the old bull-headed god. Whether it's a symbolic ritual or something more, the imagery is potent. It taps into a deep-seated fear that those in power engage in practices far removed from public view, paying homage to forces that demand sacrifice for power. This isn't just about one secretive club. The symbolism of Moloch appears in various esoteric traditions, representing a willingness to sacrifice morality for material gain. It's the ultimate pact, a trade of innocence for influence, a theme that has captivated and horrified the human imagination for millennia. But the influence of Moloch isn't confined to secret rituals. The name itself has become a powerful metaphor for the insatiable hunger of the state and its vast impersonal systems. No one captured this better than the poet Allen Ginsberg in his groundbreaking work, How. He wrote, Moloch, solitude, filth, ugliness, ashkins and unobtainable dollars, children screaming under the stairways, boys sobbing in armies, old men weeping in the parks. For Ginsberg, Moloch wasn't a deity of bronze and fire, but a spirit haunting modern America. It was the soulless machinery of industrialization that chewed up landscapes and lives. It was a faceless bureaucracy that demanded conformity. It was the specter of war, a monstrous engine that consumes generations of young men as its offering. Moloch became the embodiment of any oppressive system that demands the sacrifice of humanity, creativity, and love for the sake of profit, progress, or power. Think of the sprawling, smoke-belching factories of the Industrial Revolution, where workers, including children, were sacrificed for economic growth. Think of the trenches of World War I, where millions were fed into the meat grinder of nationalism. In this context, Moloch is the ultimate symbol of a system that has grown so large and so powerful that it no longer serves humanity, but instead demands that humanity serve it, often at a terrible cost. It's the cold, unfeeling logic of the machine, the system that prioritizes its own survival above all else. So where do we find Moloch today? Is it just a historical footnote or a literary device? The chilling reality is that the archetype of Moloch is more present than ever, woven into the very fabric of our 21st century lives. We may not build brazen idols, but we make our sacrifices all the same. Consider the algorithms that govern our digital world. Social media platforms designed to maximize engagement often sacrifice our mental well-being, our privacy, and our ability for deep thought. We feed them our time, our data, and our attention, and in return they give us a fleeting sense of connection, all while a massive unseen machine profits. It's a modern form of sacrifice, a trait of our authentic selves for digital validation. Then there's the relentless engine of consumerism. We are encouraged to sacrifice our financial security and the planet's resources for the latest gadgets and fleeting trends. The pressure to keep up creates a cycle of desire and dissatisfaction, a modern ritual where we offer our hard-earned money to the god of the marketplace. And perhaps most terrifyingly, there is the war economy. Nations continue to pour trillions of dollars into weapons and conflict, sacrificing funding for healthcare, education, and infrastructure. We offer up peace and stability at the altar of geopolitical power and defense contracts. In this sense, Moloch is a coordination problem. It's the name we give to the race to the bottom, where everyone acting in their own self-interest leads to a collective outcome that nobody wants. It's the force that drives us toward short-term gains at the expense of long-term survival. The ancient god demanded children. The modern Moloch demands our attention, our data, our well-being, and our future. Recognizing it is the first step toward refusing to pay its price. From ancient Carthage to Bohemian Grove, from Ginsberg's poetry to the algorithms on our phones, the shadow of Moloch endures. It's a powerful symbol for any system that demands we sacrifice the best parts of our humanity. But here's the crucial part. A symbol only has the power we give it. By understanding how these sacrificial systems work, we can begin to resist them. We can choose to disconnect, to prioritize genuine human connection over digital metrics to consume consciously, and to demand a world that values people over profit and peace over conflict. The story of Moloch is a dark one, but it's also a warning. It's a call to be vigilant, to question who or what we are making sacrifices for, and to ensure that our future is built on a foundation of compassion, not consumption. It's a reminder to protect our humanity from the unfeeling machines we create. Thank you for watching. If this exploration made you think, please like this video and subscribe for a deeper descent into the ideas that shape our world. Stay curious.